Great. So now that we have our semantic UI library in place and we have the custom semantic JSON file generated and all the other files generated, we're going to move in to converting the application in its current state from a Blaze-oriented application. Blaze is another another JavaScript UI library. I don't touch Blaze. I only touch React.js. It's a much better and easier to use library, or I'm more accustomed to React. So one of the things we're going to put in place is an init.js file, and that's going to use something here for our decentralized application. I'm copying and pasting this code over. Yes, I am. And I'm going to explain really quick what it's doing. Init.js, when the application loads, this is going to be a Web3 implementation. And what happens is when the window loads, this is an asynchronous function, so when the window loads completely for the end user, it's going to attempt to load the Ethereum object as a Web3 global variable. And then we use this Web3 global variable elsewhere. It's one of the ways that we allow and actually connect with the MetaMask application. When you look at decentralized applications, MetaMask always asks for approval, and this is something that the creators of MetaMasks themselves forced decentralized applications to use. So this is very important to have here. I think I can go ahead and add some nice things in this HTML here. We're actually going to get rid of all of this and everything below. And I personally like working on darker backgrounds, so we're going to have this background color 1C, whatever, you know. And I think the main.js is going to be a little bit different. We're actually going to turn this over to a JSX file and keep just this. Basically, when it loads, it's importing the React and the Meteor, and if we need to ever do anything on startup, we can do it in this specific file. That's when the entire application starts, not necessarily when a user connects. And this is going to about cover it for everything. I think when we get into the flow router side of things and having different URL or different sections for our website, we're going to have one other JSX file. It's called roots.jsx, and I think all we're going to be doing is, yeah, we do need a layout. I'll get to that in a second. Yeah, let's do that. So React.js is a little bit complicated for people that have not used React in the past, so I'm going to copy this code in and explain it. I'm going to break down exactly what this code is essentially doing within our application. It just so happens that this is a hell of a lot easier to understand once the code is actually in place. So we're going to create a layouts directory. This layouts directory is going to hold the main layout.jsx that you see I have up there at the top. Now, what are we doing with our main JSX or our main layout.jsx file? Well, we're going to be actually I think this is all we need for right now. We're going to be exporting a main layout from this file, which is passed in components, and that's going to render basically the entire application through this one main layout. And everything else, this is like the parent, this is like the mother load, and then everything else, all the smaller subcomponents, are fed into this main layout. So we're going to go ahead and create a div, and we'll go ahead and create another div, style, min height, 500 pixels, and this will be our where we throw the components, and then maybe we would have like a footer at the bottom, and maybe we would have I think I'll go ahead and import a header from our semantic UI React library, and throw a header up at the top. Got to use interesting syntax for this bracket here. Now, the idea is that if you look at this routes.jsx, okay, main layout. So this is the main layout variable that's getting exported in a global fashion. And when a user lands on this route, the home, this is the base direct. Like if you go to google.com/ and then nothing, this is what you would access. So Kadira Flow Router is saying, well, whenever a user enters into this specific URL endpoint, then mount on this global main layout component this particular, like if we have a home, and what we're going to have to do is actually add another directory called imports, and this is about it for the scaffolding. We might have UI in one, and we might have Mongo in another, for our Mongo collections. But I think this about does it for our imports. We're going to have a home.jsx, and we could have a second route called assets.jsx if we want to show if a user has Wrapped Ethereum or settings, they want to control some settings, something, or they want to see all the balances of their crypto wallet. But regardless, these would be the smaller components that then get fed into this main layout. So if, for instance, I'll copy over what one of these might look like. This is the home, and this is the assets. Then you have an assets component, and a home component, and the main layout would get fed these components. And if you're on home, then maybe I'll show you a quick trick. If you type in the name of it and you hit enter, it'll automatically import this component. Everything's components in React, automatically import that into the rooting directory. So I think that about covers everything we might need. There does need to be a server side, which we already have. I thought so. So we already have that taken care of. We already have our packages, our npm peer dependencies. If we need to have any images, any public images on our or I should say any image files, audio files, video files, we throw those in a directory called public, and we can access those. And just to show you that our application, while we were making these changes, our application was in fact updating constantly. Let's see how our application, let's see what the current state of our application is. Client modified refreshing. This should come as no surprise, but our application is an unexpected error. Oh, the server responded with a status of 503 service unavailable. That's because we're currently building the application, so after we made all of those massive changes, the application doesn't know what to do. So while this is taking place, let me explain some of the scaffolding we've done thus far. Tests, and I'll start from the bottom. This is the 3 files that are in the root directory. We can ignore the external libraries and scratches and consoles. Package.lock.json, package.json, and .getIgnore. The only one that is important here is package.json with the dependencies. This is the npm pure dependencies that we can access, but also install through the command prompt. We have tests, which would be for if Meteor is client. I see. So these might be tests that are on load up. We could write our own if we have scripts that we want to do unit testing on, functions that we want to have unit testing done. We have a server main.js. This is called when the application starts immediately. And I think only runs once. We have node modules, which are all of the node, because everything runs on Node.js. And we have imports, where we have UI components. If we want to have MongoDB collections, we'll be using this folder. We added main.html. Oh, wait, there's an error in this. Do you see this? Could not resolve meteor.main module main.js. Maybe I wasn't supposed to change. Okay. Well, I think that solved that problem. So there is no root for the path /. All right, let's take a look. We'll start the application, we'll start the program from scratch because that may not be able to recognize the new routes without a full restart. So let's go ahead and do that and just cover our bases. And then from there, I think we will have everything in place structurally. There is no root for the path /. How about the path /assets? There is no root for the path /assets. Okay. Well, I am puzzled. Okay, this is going to do it. The package.json had additional information that we did not want in it, so we're going to be taking that out, and we should, as soon as it restarts, have everything back to normal. A little debugging on our path to glory. So we've done it. So we have our application, and I resolved that pretty quickly. I'm pretty happy about that. So we have our application here, and if we go to the assets, we'll see that this loads assets. Now if we go somewhere else, then it's going to say there's no route for the path as E. But for these particular routes, we are rendering these smaller components. So if I put in, a ton of header assets, or header in the assets component, and then went to assets, it would load a ton of them. In fact, we can make, real time update and rendering that we can view on the client side. So assets. So we have the scaffolding in place, and we have the different routes. I think what we're going to do from here is build a menu, and something like home. Maybe we'll create some smaller components. Maybe we'll have a home page that explains what the application does, and then we'll have a conversion component. So in fact, what we'll do is we'll refactor this component to convert.jsx. Do you also want to rename the class and its usages to convert? Yes. Now, this can get tricky because your old files, for example, routes, may not be pointing to the correct directory. So go take a look, import convert from assets. No, in fact, it's convert.jsx now. Got to change that. And we do want to change the actual URL route and the name of it. This will come in handy a little bit later. Convert. The component is converting. Convert. Fantastic. So we have our smaller components in place, and this sets up everything for implementing some of the Web3 components.